If you have ever, thought about setting up an aquarium in your living room, or maybe you actually already have one, your expectation is probably, well, tranquility, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's the whole appeal.
Yeah, exactly. You picture this like peaceful, softly glowing box of water, basically a living screensaver.
Right, a little slice of zen.
You feed them a little pinch of flakes before you go to work, you watch them glide around the plants, and your blood pressure is just, supposed to magically drop.
It is a super common assumption. I mean, people view it as a completely passive experience. You buy this prefabricated peacefulness at the pet store, take it home, and plug it into the wall.
But then you actually look at the mechanics of what it takes to keep a tank from descending into absolute total chaos.
And that zen illusion shatters pretty quickly.
It shatters completely. I mean, if you are really paying attention to the ecosystem, you're looking at a landscape that is incredibly high stakes.
Because you're dealing with the ultimate closed system. It's a high-pressure environment where that illusion of peace requires just a staggering amount of behind-the-scenes manipulation.
Environmental design, basically.
Exactly.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking you into the surprisingly complex, honestly intensely strategic world of maintaining that balance.
It's a wild ride.
It really is. And to do this, we are looking at a truly fascinating source today. It's a blog post dated March 25, 2026 from a site called qianmeng.org.
Yeah, written by a guy named Eng.
Right, Eng.
Yeah.
And he describes himself as an old software plumber who spends his nights tinkering with open source software.
Though, to be fair, calling his approach just, tinkering barely scratches the surface.
Oh, it is a massive understatement.
Yeah.
Finding Eng's blog is like stumbling into this incredible, meticulously organized treasure trove of data.
It really is.
He has been blogging since 2011. And he does not just focus on one niche. I mean, he has these extensive, highly detailed notes on Haskell programming, Elixir, Python.
But then he applies that exact same rigorous logging to, his gardening.
Yes. His gardening, his dieting, his exercise routines. But what we are zeroing in on today is his notes on fish keeping, specifically Part 217.
And honestly, the sheer volume implied by the phrase Part 217 tells you everything you need to know about his mindset.
Right.
This is not your casual hobbyist just watching fish swim around. This is exhaustive, iterative documentation.
Yeah. He's basically applying the scientific method and software debugging principles to a glass box of water.
Which is why it reads like a masterclass in behavioral management.
So our mission today is to decode how a hobbyist like Eng essentially acts as a social engineer.
Yeah.
Because when you read his patch notes, and they really read like patch notes for his fish tank, you realize he isn't just keeping pets.
No, not at all.
He is actively designing a society. He's trying to manage severe aggression and artificially manufacture a balanced ecosystem.
Which is just such an incredible intersection to explore. I mean, you have the systems thinking of a software plumber colliding with the sheer, messy unpredictability of biology.
Biology never does exactly what you tell it to do.
Right. And think about it from his professional perspective. In software, if a piece of code acts aggressively and breaks the system, you just rewrite the code.
You find the bug, you fix it.
Exactly. But in an aquarium, you cannot rewrite the fundamental nature of a fish.
So you have to re-engineer the entire environment around the fish.
Yes. You have to change the parameters of their world so that their natural, unchangeable code outputs a peaceful result instead of, a destructive one.
Okay, so to understand how Eng goes about engineering this piece, I want to look at the specific bug in his system, like the primary problem he's trying to solve here.
The catalyst for all of this.
Right. He's dealing with a species called the Golden Mbuna.
The scientific name is Melanochromis auratus.
Thank you. And going through his previous posts, we know he originally had just 2 of these fish in the tank.
Just 2.
Yeah, and that led to a massive, critical issue with the dominant male's territorial aggression.
Well, the Golden Mbuna is notoriously feisty. I mean, to understand why, you really have to look at their evolutionary biology.
Okay, let's unpack that.
So these fish originate from Lake Malawi in Africa. In the wild, a dominant male has this enormous expanse of a lake to establish as his personal territory.
Right, got plenty of space.
Right. And if another fish enters that zone, the male's biological code tells him to chase the intruder away.
And in a lake, the other fish just, swims off into millions of gallons of water. The problem is solved.
Exactly. But put that exact same fish in a glass box in your living room, and the dynamic completely changes.
Because there is no away.
There's no away. The boundaries of the world are fixed, and they're highly restrictive.
So that natural instinct to just chase a trespasser away, it turns into an infinite loop.
It becomes relentless, inescapable bullying. The dominant male will fixate on whatever is in his territory, and since his territory is now literally the entire tank, he will hound the target until that other fish is completely stressed out, exhausted,
Or dead.
Or dead, yeah. The aggression never resets because the other fish is never able to actually successfully leave the territory.
Which brings us to Aang's solution. He realizes he cannot have just 2 of these fish. It's a broken system.
Right.
So he decides to implement what he calls a harem ratio. He wants to shift the dynamic from just 2 fish to 1 male and multiple females.
A very common strategy in social keeping.
Okay, but I'm looking at the numbers he documented, and he doesn't just add like 1 or 2 companions. He introduces 15 new fish to the population all at once.
Yeah, quite the jump.
15. I mean, he notes they're most likely females. But still, 15 at once seems completely extreme. What is the logic of jumping from 2 fish to 17?
It relies on a behavioral mechanism we can call target dilution.
Target dilution. Okay, explain that.
Well, it seems totally counterintuitive, right? Like solving an aggression problem by adding more potential victims.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking.
But you have to look at how the dominant male processes information. By vastly increasing the number of females, his aggression is dispersed across a much wider group.
Oh, I see. So every time he starts to chase one specific female, another one swims into his line of sight.
Exactly. And his attention is broken. His biological targeting system just gets overwhelmed.
It's like having too many pop-up ads on your computer.
That's a great way to put it. He is constantly distracted by a new target entering his visual field. So the sheer volume of fish prevents him from fixating on and ultimately destroying any single individual.
Wow.
The overall output of aggression from the male is exactly the same, but it is spread so thin across the 15 newcomers that the stress on any individual fish drops to a manageable level.
It is a mathematical solution to a biological problem.
It really is.
Okay, I see the math, but I have to push back hard on this.
Go for it.
Aang himself writes in the blog, I think I might have gone a bit overboard. It's a bit of a crime.
Oh, God.
He does say that.
And if you think about this practically, doesn't solving aggression with massive overcrowding just create a totally new, potentially way worse kind of environmental stress?
Yeah, how do you mean?
I mean, it is like trying to stop a bar fight by just cramming 200 more people into the room so nobody has the elbow room to actually throw a punch.
That analogy perfectly captures the physical reality of the tank.
Right.
You have successfully stopped the lethal bar fight, but now everyone is incredibly uncomfortable because the room is packed. And you are pointing out the exact trade-off Aang is navigating here.
He's swapping one problem for another.
He is swapping acute, lethal aggression for chronic, systemic stress. And that stress comes in 2 forms, really. Physical and chemical.
Wait, what do you mean by chemical stress?
So in the aquarium world, it is called the bioload.
Yeah. When you add 15 fish to a tank all at once, you are not just taking up physical swimming space. You are causing a massive sudden spike in biological waste.
Oh, right. Because more fish means more breathing, more eating, and, well, more waste.
Exactly. Which means a massive spike in ammonia. An aquarium actually relies on this delicate colony of invisible bacteria in the filter to eat that waste and turn it into harmless compounds.
So if you suddenly invite 15 people to live in your studio apartment, the plumbing is going to fail.
That is exactly what happens. The bacterial colony in the tank needs time to multiply to handle the new waste load. And until it does, the water itself literally becomes toxic.
Wow, so he solved the immediate murder problem. But now he has an overcrowded tank that might actually poison itself.
Which is why the water changes and the filtration management become his immediate priority behind the scenes.
Okay, but assuming he manages the invisible chemical plumbing, he still has to deal with the physical discomfort of the crowd. I mean, the underlying aggression has not magically vanished. It has just been redirected and diluted.
Right. The male still wants to be aggressive.
So how do you mitigate the psychological stress of the crowd?
You change the architecture.
The physical architecture of the tank.
Yes.
Which leads us directly into how Aang begins actively modifying the physical space. Because, you know, he does not just dump 15 fish into an empty glass box and hope for the best.
No, that would be a disaster.
Right. He initiates some serious aquascape engineering. And this is where it stops being about making the tank look pretty for the living room.
Oh, the aesthetics are secondary now. The environment becomes purely functional.
Like every physical object he places in that water serves a specific behavioral purpose.
He is attempting to build an environment that literally forces the society to function.
Okay, let's look at the actual modifications he made. First, he introduces a new substrate to the bottom of the tank. Soft sand.
Essential.
Yeah, he specifically notes in his log that this is so the bonded pair can perform their mating rituals.
Right.
Apparently, the male Golden Mbuna's natural behavior involves doing this, like, elaborate dance over the sand to attract the females.
This is a brilliant piece of behavioral redirection on Aang's part.
How so?
Well, Aang is providing the specific environmental trigger required for natural courtship. Think of the male fish like a computer processor that's just running at maximum capacity.
Okay.
Right now, all of its processing power is dedicated to territorial defense and aggression.
But by giving him the soft sand, you give him a new program to run.
Exactly. You are channeling his intense, pent-up energy away from violence and into a reproductive imperative.
Wow.
Without the soft sands, the male literally cannot perform the courtship dance. The biological energy has nowhere to go but back toward aggression.
But wait, courtship itself is still a highly aggressive, exhausting process for the females, isn't it?
Very much so.
I mean, you have 15 females in a crowded tank, and this dominant male is constantly doing a sand dance, aggressively trying to get their attention. The females are going to need a break.
They absolutely need a way to opt out of the interaction.
Which means Aang needs to build them some hiding spots.
Yes.
And he mentions in the post that he couldn't find the correct rounded artificial Ks he was originally looking for.
Yeah.
So, acting like a true tinkerer, he just improvises.
What does he use?
He uses smaller ceramic pipes. And he notes these pipes are typically used for breeding entirely different, much smaller fish species.
Right.
So they aren't perfect, but the size is just sufficient for the Golden Mbuna to squeeze inside.
And the function of those improvised ceramic pipes is absolutely critical here. It is entirely about managing the psychological stress we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
In the aquarium hobby, there is a fundamental rule for managing aggressive cichlids. To reduce aggression, you must break the line of sight.
Out of sight, literally out of mind.
In a very literal biological sense, yes. Many fish, including these Mbuna, operate heavily on visual triggers. They lack the complex object permanence that mammals have.
Meaning if they can't see it, it's gone.
Precisely. If a male is chasing a female, and she darts into a ceramic pipe where he can no longer see her, she effectively ceases to exist in his threat matrix.
It is like playing an extreme game of peekaboo.
That's exactly it. The chase ends instantly, his aggression resets, and he swims away to look for something else he actually can see.
Wow.
So those pipes are not just quaint decorations, they are life-saving infrastructure. They provide a physical boundary and a space that otherwise has none.
It makes me think of, like, an architect designing a high-end nightclub.
Oh, that's an interesting comparison.
Think about it. If you are trying to engineer a very specific, high-energy social dynamic, you absolutely need the main dance floor.
Right.
That is the soft sand. You need the open space for the display, the courtship, the energy. But if you only have a dance floor, people get overwhelmed. You desperately need the VIP booths.
Ah, the ceramic pipes.
Yes, you need those dark, enclosed, exclusive spaces to hide in when the crowd gets to be way too much, and you just need to escape the attention for a few minutes.
It is a perfect structural comparison, because if your nightclub only have a packed dance floor and nowhere to retreat to, the social tension inevitably escalates until the environment becomes hostile.
Fights break out, people leave.
Exactly. You need both the space for display and the space for refuge. And Aang is trying to balance both of those biological needs simultaneously in his tank.
Okay, so let's just review his system architecture here.
Let's do it.
We have the harem ratio, the 15 females to dilute the targeting aggression.
Oh.
We have the soft sand to redirect energy into the mating dance. And we have the ceramic pipes for the VIP refuge to break the line of sight.
It sounds like an incredibly solid, well-thought-out plan.
It really does.
Yeah.
But Aang is fundamentally a software guy.
Right.
He knows that no matter how clean your code is or how well you design your architecture, the system might still crash.
Because you can never fully predict how biological entities will react to a sudden, massive shift in their environment. I mean, a temperature fluctuation, a failure in the filtration, or just one particularly stubborn fish can bring the whole system down.
Which brings us to his contingency plan. And this is the part of the blog post that really made me stop and reread it.
Oh, yeah, the backup plan.
Right. Even with the perfect dance floor and optimal hiding spots, what happens if this artificial society collapses under the pressure?
What's his move?
Well, Aang writes, let's see how this goes in the coming days. If the tank proves to be too crowded, we'll move half the population to an outdoor pond.
Okay, so a logical failsafe. If the population density is causing the system to fail, you just reduce the density by migrating half the users to a new server, basically.
I would agree with that, except there's a massive catch.
Which is?
He casually mentions that this outdoor pond is already occupied by a large peacock cichlid. Yeah. And Aang's reaction to this is not worry or concern about the fish. He writes, and I quote, "I'm actually quite curious to see how this aggressive and territorial species will mingle with that large peacock cichlid on that particular pond. It'll definitely be an interesting social experiment."
An interesting social experiment.
I have to challenge the logic here.
Mm-hmm.
His backup plan for saving these fish from stressing each other out in the tank is to throw them into an outdoor gladiator arena with a giant territorial fish.
It sounds wild, I know.
How is that a solution? You are taking a group of fish that are already struggling with aggression and dropping them into a boss fight.
It sounds chaotic, but there is actually a fascinating behavioral logic to it.
Really? Explain that, because I don't see it.
So when you introduce a significantly larger predator, or simply a much larger dominant species, like the peacock cichlid, you completely alter the threat hierarchy.
Oh, you change the scale of the problem.
Exactly. Inside the glass tank, the male Golden Mbuna believes he is the apex of that specific universe.
Right, he's the king of the castle.
His only job is to assert dominance over his own species. But you drop him into a vast outdoor pond with a massive peacock cichlid.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the Mbuna is at the bottom of the food chain.
So his biological priorities have to shift instantly.
He goes from, I must defend this territory, to, I need to survive.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Often, in multi-species environments, the sheer intimidation factor of a larger fish forces smaller, aggressive fish to completely abandon their own infighting. They band together or simply keep their heads down.
Wow.
The rules of the society changed because the apex authority changed.
So the peacock cichlid acts like a massive, terrifying bouncer at our nightclub.
Yes.
If the bouncer is huge and intimidating enough, the patrons stop fighting each other and just try to stay out of his way.
It is a drastic variable shift.
Yeah.
And that phrase he uses, social experiment, it really highlights the profound shift that happens when a person moves from simply keeping pretty fish to actively studying them.
He becomes a researcher.
Aang is not just a passive caretaker anymore. He is an observer of complex systems. He is fully prepared to pivot from a tightly controlled breeding environment to a chaotic, multi-species territorial observation.
He is embracing the unpredictability of nature just to see what the system will do.
Right. Will they fight? Will the pond be large enough that they just ignore each other?
Will the peacock cichlid intimidate them into total submission?
He doesn't know, but you can be absolutely certain that whatever happens, Aang will be there, taking meticulous notes on the outcomes for part 218 of his blog.
It's just wild to me. It really reframes everything you think you know about the hobby.
Totally.
So if you are listening to this and you are wondering how the territorial disputes of African cichlids apply to you, I think the biggest takeaway is that managing any kind of enclosed system, whether it's an aquarium, a software team, or a household, is never just about the basic inputs and outputs.
It is not just dropping in food and changing the water.
Exactly. It is a dynamic, ongoing process of observation and adjustment. It is a constant cycle of behavioral management, environmental design, and trial and error.
Always iterated.
You're constantly tweaking the variables, observing the results, and tweaking again. Just like Aang adding the sand, watching the courtship dance, realizing they need a break, adding the ceramic pipes, and observing the refuge. It is a beautifully complex puzzle.
And if we pull the lens all the way back and look at Aang's broader documentation, remember the context of this source.
Right.
This is a man who logs everything. He tracks the minute bugs in complex software code with the exact same level of detail that he tracks the mating dances of his fish.
Yeah.
He watches how changing a physical environment dictates the social behavior of a group.
He's studying the mechanics of how living things share space.
Which leaves you with a really fascinating thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
If observing the power dynamics, the desperate need for refuge, and the territorial aggression of fish in a confined tank teaches us so much about how complex social systems function, what would a highly observant social engineer conclude about our own hidden behaviors?
Oh, wow. That is a great question.
Right. If someone were hovering above us, taking meticulous patch notes on the layout of our modern open-plan offices, or the incredible density of our cities,
What kind of social experiment would they say you and I are currently living in?
Exactly. Are we given the right environment to channel our energy, or are we just trapped in a glass box, endlessly bumping into each other?
Do we have enough ceramic pipes to hide in when the crowd gets to be too much?
That's the real question.
That might be the most important question of all. It really makes you realize that the next time you stare into that softly glowing, supposedly peaceful box of water in a waiting room or a living room,
You're not looking at a screensaver.
no, you are not. You are looking at a mirror of social engineering, and suddenly it is anything but relaxing.